Hi, Wayne Emmons here. If you have reviewed the broadcast in this series, you now realize the gradual decline of support for Israel by the United States during the past 40 years, especially since 1991. Presidential administrations have gradually leaned more to the whims of Israel's surrounding enemy neighbors as they have coerced Israel to yield parts of their God-given land to their enemies, including Jerusalem. My research in developing today's broadcast and those before has been a fascinating journey. You would think that the leaders of the most blessed and powerful nation on earth, the United States of America, would realize that when God says something, He means it. Then again, I am reminded of stories in the Bible, the pharaohs, the Roman emperors, for example. Today's broadcast focuses on Barak Hussein Obama, President of the United States of America from 2009 to 2017. Stay tuned. You will be amazed at what you will learn during this broadcast. Let's look at Bible scriptures that describe what God Himself told Abraham thousands of years ago, the patriarch, the father of the Jewish people. It's found in Genesis, the 12th chapter, and the 3rd verse. President Barak Hussein Obama served 2 terms as president from 2009 to 2017, and during my research for today's broadcast, I initially found supporters who exemplified President Obama's favorable support for Israel. However, other reporters exemplified a very different picture. I will be presenting several facts from my research, so you might want to get pen and paper ready so you can verify things for yourself. Here's my friend, Professor Wanna Know. He will occasionally summarize the information in this video to help you summarize your notes. Pause the video if you want to compare your notes with his. There is an abundance of resources to help you find truth for yourself. Google, YouTube, books, etc. And here are 2 books I would like to suggest to help you get started during your research. One is called Eye to Eye by William Koenig, and the other is called As America Has Done to Israel by John McTernan. But do your own research. Okay, do you have pen and paper ready? The facts I will be citing are nowhere near being all-inclusive, but it will be plenty for you during the limited time of this broadcast and will hopefully inspire you toward your own research. Here is a fact. The new President Barack Obama reached out to the Islamic world in an interview with Al Arabiya TV during his first week in office. He also gave a speech to the Turkish parliament on April 6th, and early on he spoke to the Islamic world from Cairo, Egypt on June 4th, while pressing his will to stop all Jewish settlement construction in Israel. During the early months of his presidency, his Middle East envoy, George Mitchell, was exerting major pressure on the Israeli leadership to stop the settlements in Israel. Are the following things coincidence or consequential? During February 10 and 11, severe weather plowed through the U.S. Southeast and Ohio Valley, leaving $1.9 billion worth of damage. During March 25th through the 28th, tornadoes occurred throughout the U.S. Midwest and Southeast, leaving $1.8 billion worth of damage. During April 9 through 10, tornadoes, hail, and severe storms prevailed over southern U.S., leaving $1.6 billion damages. During June 9 through 12, a strong, sustained breakout of thunderstorms and high winds whipped through the southern and eastern U.S., leaving $1.5 billion in damage. Another fact. On June 18th, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had a confrontational press conference with Israeli Foreign Minister Lieberman. With Clinton standing next to him, she told reporters, quote, "We want to see a stop to the Jewish settlements," end quote. Lieberman, who himself lived in one of these settlements, was appalled by Clinton's statements. Right after this meeting, Hillary Clinton tripped and fell in the basement of the State Department as she prepared to leave the White House for a meeting with President Obama. Another fact. During Vice President Joe Biden's visit to Israel on March 9 and 10, he said, and I quote, "The Palestinians deserve a viable independent state with contiguous territory," end quote. On March 19th, the so-called quartet, that would be the United Nations, European Union, U.S., and Russia, jointly condemned the decision by the government of Israel to advance planning for new housing units in East Jerusalem. In May, at a private meeting at the Council for Foreign Relations, Israeli Vice Prime Minister Moshe Ya'alon called Obama, quote, "the least pro-Israel president in American history," end quote. During late April and into early May, the Obama administration pushed Israel to hand to the Palestinian Authority full control of a major neighborhood in Jerusalem as a so-called confidence-building gesture to jumpstart Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. There was little mention of any gestures of goodwill from the Palestinians. This will pique your interest. During the period April 20th through July 15th, the largest accidental marine spill in history brought havoc on the Gulf of Mexico when the oil rig Deepwater Horizon exploded and sank at the British Petroleum Prospect, allowing oil to gush into the Gulf for 87 days. President Obama made the following statements on May 19th, and I quote, "The U.S. believes that negotiations should result in two states with permanent Palestine borders," end quote. He continued, quote, "We believe the borders of Israel and Palestine should be based on the 1967 lines," end quote. On May 20th, the quartet, United Nations, European Union, U.S., and Russia, expressed its strong support for the vision of the Israeli-Palestinian peace plan outlined by President Obama on May 19. Interesting, don't you agree? That some 350 or so tornadoes, roughly 25% of which were strong and violent, ravaged America's landscape during April 25th through 28th. It was the super outbreak of 2011. From May 22nd through the 27th, an additional 180 tornadoes tore through 15 central and southern states. At least one of these was an EF5 at Joplin, Missouri. It was the deadliest single tornado, 160 deaths, to strike the U.S. since recording of modern tornadoes began in 1950. As Israel's capital, Jerusalem, was under diplomatic threat, the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C., suffered significant damage from a large earthquake. The 550-foot-tall Washington Monument was encased in 500 tons of scaffolding for repair from the damage of that earthquake. More facts. On March 5th, President Obama told Netanyahu, quote, "The U.S. will always have Israel's back," end quote. However, one would be hard-pressed to find anyone on Obama's staff who could be identified as friend of Israel. Peace talks were stalled during this year, 2012. But nevertheless, UN Ambassador Susan Rice repeated the Obama administration's stance regarding the Middle East when she stated on October the 15th, quote, "We actively support the creation of a Palestinian state as part of a two-state solution resulting from direct negotiations without preconditions between the Israelis and Palestinians," end quote. It is also of interest that on October 24th, Obama endorsed same-sex marriage in 3 states, Maryland, Maine, and Washington. What's really interesting is, and one truly has to wonder, what did Ambassador Rice mean without preconditions? Did she understand the precondition clearly stated by God Himself, the creator of the universe? And also, did Obama not know of God's command against homosexuality and fornication? Between October 29 and November 1st, Hurricane Sandy walloped the northeast U.S. And interesting in itself, the hurricane occurred on the 21st anniversary of the perfect storm and the Madrid Peace Conference, referenced George H.W. Bush administration. Sandy was the second costliest hurricane in U.S. history behind Katrina. At this point, it is worth reviewing yet another scripture in the Bible, and it is straight from the lips of the Creator of the heavens and earth. Joel 3rd chapter, 2nd verse. Let's continue with some more facts and points of interest. Just as the year 2012 was relatively quiet regarding the U.S.'s detrimental treatment to Israel, the year of 2013 was just the opposite. President Obama visited Jerusalem to promote a two-state solution. Obama's new Secretary of State, John Kerry, got the Arab League involved. The U.S. abstained on UN Security Council Resolution 2334, and Obama and Kerry attempted to influence the outcome of the 2015 Israeli election against Netanyahu with $350,000 of misappropriated tax funds. None of these events compared, however, to the infamous Iran nuclear deal. It was the crowning achievement of his foreign policy, but it was riddled with dangerous flaws. Obama's deal gave Iran an open door to a nuclear arsenal within a bit more than a decade, and enriched the regime beyond Ali Khamenei's wildest dreams. Highlights of the plan include these: sanction relief. Dozens of Iranian companies, including airlines, shipping, and petrochemicals, were no longer under restrictions. A sunset clause. Many nuclear restrictions would be lifted in 10, 15, or 25 years. No inspection of sensitive military sites, but please note, no Western intelligence agency has ever known that a country got to nuclear breakout stage before they actually did. Ballistic missiles. This was not included in the Iran deal. An estimated $50 to $150 billion to the Iranian government, That's quite a range of estimated cash loaded aboard transportation vehicles during nighttime hours. Very interesting. During February 18 and 19, as Obama and Kerry were planning an Israel trip, a historical winter storm blasted Kerry's hometown. On March 20 through 22nd, as Obama was visiting Jerusalem to promote that two-state plan, the presidential limo broke down, and also massive dust storms grounded Marine One helicopter and toppled over farewell tents at Ben Gurion Airport as Obama was leaving. During May 18 through the 21st, Kerry angered the Israelis and Palestinians as he continued to pressure them both. Tornadoes plowed through the Midwest plains of the U.S. and the Northeast during this same period. During May 27 through 31, as Kerry traveled to Jerusalem and Ramallah, tornadoes and severe weather broke out over the Midwest, the plains, and Northeast U.S. In December 12 through 13, as Kerry met Abbas in Ramallah and then Netanyahu in Jerusalem, a once-in-a-century storm blanketed Jerusalem and Israel. More facts. At the White House on March 3rd, Obama made a clear statement to both Netanyahu and Abbas. Quote, "Cooperate with the U.S. initiative and make progress, or go it alone after talks fail, which will not be pleasant going." End quote. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu wanted more focus on Iran, but President Obama sloughed it off while praising Abbas for cooperation from the Palestinians. And meanwhile, John Kerry's efforts in the peace process was coming to an end, while seen by most as miserable failure. This is interesting. One of the biggest mid-March snowstorms on record blanketed Washington, D.C. on March 3rd, dropping more than 5 times normal snowfall. More facts. During the year 2015, the Obama administration did not exert major pressure on Israel to make peace with the Palestinians. It should be noted that neither were there any billion-dollar catastrophes during that year. There was, however, a lot of posturing throughout the year 2015, but most of the attention was on the Iran nuclear deal that was agreed to on July 15th. Look at this. During March, it was discovered that Obama's State Department had funded opposition candidates to defeat Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. in order to have someone more open to a peace deal with the Palestinians. That effort failed as Netanyahu won the 2014 election in Israel. President Obama responded that the United States would be re-evaluating their relationship with Israel in the coming years. Three significant events occurred in 2016 with corresponding warnings to not bring abuse against the apple of God's eye, the Jewish people. On January 16, President Obama heralded the Iran deal from the White House as the major foreign policy achievement. Yet this deal had returned billions of dollars of frozen financial assets to Iran, the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. During the same week, the Obama administration made blistering attacks on Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Jewish settlement communities. On January 23rd, U.S. Customs issued a reminder saying West Bank products cannot be marked as made in Israel. Now, let's look at some interesting events. Hurricane Jonas clambered Washington, D.C. and New York City on January 23rd with record-breaking storms. U.S. News and World Report called Jonas a storm of the century. Record-breaking snowfalls were also recorded in three of their surrounding cities at the same time: Allentown, Pennsylvania; Baltimore, Maryland; Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. More facts. During the early spring of 2016, the world view, including that of the U.S., was that the Golan Heights was not Israel's and should be awarded to the Palestinians. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Jewish government strongly resisted this notion, even with pressures from the rest of nearly all nations on earth. Interesting. On April the 18th, the surrounding area around Houston, Texas, experienced a massive 500-year flood. 5 to 17 inches of rain fell in 24 hours. More than 1,000 homes were flooded and $5 billion worth of damage was realized throughout the massive area. More facts. During August the 8th through the 13th, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America held a convention in New Orleans, the biggest convention in Louisiana since Katrina. And this convention overwhelmingly condemned Israel. With a vote of 751 to 172, they agreed to call on the U.S. to end all Israeli settlements and to enable the Palestine state. With the vote of 821 to 92, the convention agreed to further stress their positioning by halting overall U.S. aid to Israel. No church organization or any other organization had gone to this extent. And I find it quite interesting. Massive flooding in Louisiana began on August 12th and worsened on August 13th and beyond. And the flooding was the largest in Louisiana since Hurricane Katrina during the month of August 2005. Now, before we close this broadcast, let's look one more time at the promises God made to Abraham, the patriarch and father of the Jewish people. And again, it's in Genesis, the 12th chapter, 3rd verse. It tells us where mankind came from in Genesis and how the earth, the universe, and everything else was formed in the first place. And then we read in this verse, Genesis 12, verse 3. I will be posting additional broadcasts on relevant modern-day subjects. Be sure and click on the subscribe button and the bell below to make sure you get notified when these videos are posted. And let others know what you have heard today by clicking on the like button below. This is Wayne Ammons helping you find truth, and I hope you will discover it for yourself. May God bless you.